All right, for anyone who has attended a Memorial Day parade or the Memorial Day ceremonies in Wood Park, I'm sure you will recognize our next guest on the Prominent Leonian Interview Series. It's my pleasure to introduce today Mr. Richard Palka. Richie, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
You have been incredibly involved in town. You're an advocate for all things veterans. You're a champion of POW MIA programs. You're the commander of the American Legion Post No. 1. And you have been very active in Boy Scout and Cub Scout leadership roles. In fact, when we were talking, you told me that you had a hand in helping make about 20 Eagle Scouts, including my youngest, Justin. So thank you. Thank you so much for that.
I can personally vouch for 7 that I worked very hard to get to that point, but the other 13, I had a little something to do with.
I'm sure you did. And one thing that I know about Richie is he's very modest. So that's to your credit too. We're going to talk through some of the experiences that helped define you and your military service, extraordinary military service to this country, helped catalyze who you are and what you've done. You were only 18 years old, and we talked earlier. So in January 1962, you voluntarily signed on to the Navy Reserves, and things didn't exactly go. The best laid plans don't exactly go the way you hope.
I didn't want to go to war. And my first duty station was a destroyer escort out of Brooklyn Navy Yard. And one day in Puerto Rico, we went to Red Alert and we were on the Cuban blockade.
That's right. So you were in the middle of history in the first few months, basically, that you were in the Navy. And I want to unpack some of the military experiences, but you told me, and I think this is extraordinary too, that as part of being with the military, you happened to find yourself in Washington, D.C., just as Martin Luther King was leading the civil rights movement, and you were at the I Have a Dream speech. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I've always been a proponent of equal rights, and Martin Luther King Jr. obviously is one of my heroes. And I was in Bainbridge, Maryland at Personnel A School. And I said, hey, let's take some time. Let's go. This is a big deal, right? So a couple of my shipmates and I jumped in the car and we drove down to Washington, and we were there during his speech. And I couldn't believe all the people that were there.
How do you think that affected you, that speech in particular, and helped define who you are too?
I guess it increased my concern for people in general, and it I kind of had a double-edged sword there, because Martin Luther King Jr. was so opposed to the war, and I wasn't happy about the war. But I think what happens is that the public in general gets wrapped up in the fact that there's a war and everybody associated with the war isn't good. And we were taking a beat. Anybody in uniform was taking a beating.
And you were in uniform that day?
Well, no, we were in civilian clothes.
But you had a bird's eye. I mean, you were right by the reflecting pool
to the right of the monument.
Sort of at the base of the steps, watching the speech. So you had a great seat.
It was exciting.
To history.
It really was.
Let's talk a little bit about, because I want to get into your activism for for Veterans Affairs. You're taking on the leadership roles that you have done at American Legion Post #1. But so much of what you did, and in POWMIA, so much of what you did was the result of your war experience and what you took forward from that. So we mentioned that, the best laid plans don't always, see fruition. And in your case, you hope to avoid combat.
Yeah.
That didn't happen at all. I mean, in January of 1968, through a series of events and a Marine, ultimately colonel, who took an interest in you because of your shooting skills, you wound up, and I'd like you to tell us a little bit about this, on the front lines.
We, on January 20th, 1968, well, let me start from the beginning, really. I was on command of 7th Fleet staff, and he decided to go see his boys. And we went to every Navy and Marine Corps installation west of San Diego. And we spent time in Vietnam, visiting all the naval installations there, as well as the fire bases that were attuned to the Marines. And on January 20th, we flew in helicopter into Quezon. And we're about 2 feet off the deck, and a rocket hit us. And the pilot, very cool, landed it and turned around and said, "You may want to get off. This is going to explode." And he was out the door. And we were about 20 feet away when it exploded.
And that was your...
and that was my introduction to Quezon. And so now we were informed we won't be getting another helicopter until the next day. That night at midnight, the siege started. So we were trapped in Quezon.
This was that major offensive that occurred in 1968.
Yeah. And it's 77 days long. And after that 77 days, that was April 7th when that ended, and it took them till July to completely mop up. And because there were so many entrenchments in the ground, they had tunnels everywhere, and they were just mopping people up. I wasn't there for that, but I was there for the 77 days. And the colonel said, got us together, our group together, and we were talking to this gunnery sergeant in the Corps that's stationed there at Quezon. And he looks at me and he goes, "Squid, hey, you're gonna need this." And he hands me a shotgun. And I go, "Gunny, I think there's a mistake here. See, this is for close, and I'm an aircraft carrier sailor." And he says, "Yeah, oh, I'm sorry." And he goes like this, and a guy comes over with 2 bandoleros of shotgun shells. He said, "Now you'll be able to use that."
In other words, you were going to see some close combat.
Yeah, and then he says, "You see that up there?" And I look up and I just see pretty mountains and something. He said, 861, that's the name of the hill. That's where you go. And there were about 20 of us. We fought our way up with supplies, ammunition, and all sorts of stuff they couldn't get up there. And so we got up there, and it was 24/7
fighting.
It was 24/7 fighting. They were lobbing mortars in 24/7. The one thing that made everything normal, if you will, was every morning the American flag was raised, even if there was a battle going on. And one of the traditions the Marine Corps has if nobody, what you do is you put that flag up, see how safe it is. If you need to, in our case, we had to run back to the trenches before they started really dropping stuff in. And then soon after it slowed down a little bit, a Marine would run out and hoist a pair of lacy panties from his girlfriend. And that's kind of a way to tell the enemy, sorry, you didn't get us.
I'm sure they received the message.
The words were different.
You told me that, and clearly, this was the scariest time of your life.
Yeah, it was.
So, what got you through this experience? What did it take to survive, mentally and physically?
Well, mentally, I had to keep telling myself I'm going to get through this. And I did that every few seconds, if you will. And physically, I was, I'm 24 years old. I was lean.
Mean.
In the Billy Joel song that he put out, he said, we learned to travel light, our bellies were tight and our arms were heavy. And at that time, that would describe somebody like me.
Right.
As I had good muscle tone, I had a nice flat belly.
Right. Could hold your own.
And having all the weapons that I had, because I carried the shotgun, plus an M16 and a 45. So I felt very comfortable with that, but
how close did you get to your, brothers in arms? Because it would seem to me, outside looking in, that would be integral to helping
we
you
were very close, very close. I mean, in terms of the Marines and the Navy, we don't get along very well, and we have names for each other, like Jarhead, Squid. Squid was, when they said Squid, I immediately replied because I was normal, and I go, "What's up, Jarhead?" And we were very close, and I had to count on him, he had to count on me,
and it's life and death counting on.
And that's
it's
it.
not a casual.
Yeah, definitely. So it was a very trying and scary time.
And you did get through it. You returned in, was it December?
December of 60.
So that full year. When you returned, the country, we talked about civil rights, the country's in turmoil. There's a lot of things going on. When you returned, how did that make you feel? You had just spent a year, dodging bullets with your brothers in arms, and you weren't exactly welcomed by the country.
No, we weren't. We were spit on. We were called a lot of nasty names.
Right.
And that's what I was saying in the beginning, that the war and those who participated got meshed together, so we couldn't, and it was very disturbing to me that I spent all that time doing what my country asked me to do, and here's I'm just not being treated as a person. We were really treated less than people.
I agree. I agree. And when did you start to think about getting involved in defending veterans and veterans' rights and thinking about POW MIA programs? Was it immediate, or this was a very gradual thing?
But in 1980, when Charlene and I moved here, it's Memorial Day, and I'm working on the house, and I said to Charlene, you know, I have to get some material and things for that. I said, I'll run down to Moore's, you know. I couldn't understand why they were closed. But as I was walking back to the car, Channel 2 News was walking towards the parade. I guess they were gonna publicize it.
And this is Leonia's Memorial Day
Yeah,
parade.
right. So they said to me, how come you're going this way when the parade's that way? And I said very honestly, I said, when the country starts to treat Vietnam veterans like people, then I'll come to the parade. And I went on. Of course, that never got into the news.
No.
Wasn't popular, I guess, at that time.
But little did you know that you would be leading the parades.
Yes.
Not too many years.
Not many years later. It would have been, I guess, early 90s. I was on the youth committee at St. John's Church, and was sitting around talking during one of the basketball games, and my fellow volunteers were saying, well, you know, now that the kids are graduating from grammar school and stuff, we can start to look at, you know, getting parties and stuff, and you can get the Post real cheap, you know, if you remember, right? So I said, oh, I better join. And every time
that was the impetus.
every time I went to the Post, nobody was there. And then one day I'm reading a magazine and I see something for Post 1000.
Oh, that's the state post.
That's the state post, right? And I joined that, and I not thinking 1001 a little different.
Right.
But I got a call from George Farrell.
Oh, yeah.
And he said, we see that you're a member of Post 1000 and you're not getting anything from it. Your dues never come back here to help
And
us.
George was the commander of American Legion.
Well, he was the finance officer at that time,
Yeah.
but a past commander. He was the past commander. And he said, if you come down, and why don't you come down and see how it is? If you like it, it's great. Yeah. And I walk in, and everybody turned around, and they looked at me, and I saw this glow in their eyes, because youth just walked in the door.
Which is exactly what you're looking for now.
Yeah, exactly. So
now, American Legion Post number 1 has a great history.
yeah.
I mean, and I know when you're walking in the door, you had no idea at that time necessarily. Yeah. But we are number 1.
We're number 1 in the state.
First one.
We are 5th in the country.
Wow.
2 of our members are founding fathers, if you will, wrote the Constitution for the American Legion
Overall.
in Paris.
That's
when
pretty
they were with
impressive.
Teddy Roosevelt.
And your members, the American Legion Post number 1 alumni, have fought World War I, obviously. You have John McCloy, 2-time Medal of Honor winner, and there aren't too many people who have won the Medal of Honor twice.
It doesn't happen anymore.
You had D-Day. What other?
We had they fought at D-Day. We had one guy parachuted in on D-Day. Bunch of them came ashore. We had people on the Bataan Death March. They were in all the battles. We had somebody that was in Iwo Jima. We had people at Pearl Harbor, and they were, we had just people that fought in Cochin Reservoir in Korea. We had tunnel rats from Vietnam when I came in, and there were so many heroes there that I had the opportunity to speak to.
Right.
And it was...
That's pretty cool. Just by
It was
itself.
really, really impressive. And what happens is with heroes, they're very modest. Never, nobody's strutting around going, hey, I was at D-Day. We'd have a meeting. We'd go downstairs to the dugout. We'd have some pizza or hot dogs or something and some beverage. And guys would talk about things, but
that they wouldn't necessarily talk openly about.
It was. But even there, it was low key.
Right.
Because I remember one December 7th ceremony. We had the press there, and the reporter was asking people what they did. Like she asked me, and I said, "Well, I wasn't even a gleam in my father's eye yet." And then she went to Cormont for Rome.
Right.
And said, and where were you on December 7th, 41? And he goes, Pearl Harbor. Yeah. And he explained where he was. And I'm like, wow.
You didn't know.
I didn't know.
Yeah. I remember.
Never mentioned it.
I remember Carmi. Yeah.
And a lot of these guys, you wouldn't know, that they were real heroes. They just very quiet type of thing.
Right. When do you think the veterans like yourself from Vietnam were being respected?
I'll tell you what. I believe we didn't get really recognized until the big parade in New York City.
That's often cited
That was.
as one of the turning points.
I was working at Urban Trust Company, which is right at the corner of Broadway and Wall Street.
Which is how you met Charlene.
Yes. I was out there. We're on the side entrance, which is right on Broadway, and I was with my friend. He's in full camouflage, and he had a cooler of beer, and he's drinking it right there in front of all the police and everything. And nobody said a word,
Right.
and we're talking, and a Marine came to full attention and saluted us, and that was the first time that I really felt respected.
It's about time too.
And even the VFW, the American Legion, all these Catholic Jewish War veterans, all these organizations did not respect the Vietnam veterans. They gave them a very hard time. Even post-war, we had over 400 Vietnam veterans join.
Post-war.
Post-war.
Our post.
Yeah. Within a year, there were 3 or 4 of them left because what are you talking about? That wasn't no war. It wasn't no war. Well, to smack you in the head. It's like, and when I came in, that first time I came in, that had all changed. It was pretty good. I was the kid. Right? So it was, hey kid, come here, help me with this. Hey kid, help me with this, right? Hey kid, can you get that? And the cook, grizzly old World War II veteran, never liked people in his kitchen. Right? So I'd stop in and I'd say, Joe, can I help you with something? He'd look at me and go, get out of my kitchen. And then I became the commander one. And I walked into the kitchen and I go, Joe, can I help you with something? And he said, get. And I went, and he goes, oh, I'm very sorry, Commander. Commander, please. Out of my kitchen.
So it didn't really
It
change.
didn't matter.
As
But he was, and you know me, I'm not looking for compliments and things. The greatest compliment I got as the commander of the post was from him. We were at a funeral for somebody, and I heard him over say, "He's the best commander we've had." And that, yeah, I'm not saying that because, but I'm saying he said that. He said that. And I was like,
right.
what's he talking about?
When did you get involved in the POW MIA programs? Because you participated in that.
Yeah. I've always been into that program even before it started, because I had two friends that were listed as MIA, missing in action.
And that was from the 1968 experience that you're talking about.
Richard Fitz died on the first day of his second tour. And 11 days short of 31 years, his remains were recovered, identified, and he's resting in Arlington now. My friend David Greiling left on a bombing raid of North Vietnam in July of '68. He's still on patrol. So the POW-MIA program is very personal to me.
Yes.
And we were sitting talking about what we could do on POW-MIA weekend. It became a national recognition weekend.
Right.
And I said, well, we could, somebody said, well, we'll just have a ceremony on the steps and stuff. And I said, yeah, but look what we get. We get 15, 20 people, right? I said, what if we, the POW-MIAs were in bamboo cages in Vietnam, they were in freezing cold in Korea, and the World War II guys and World War I guys were really beaten up terribly. And why don't we do something more dramatic? Like, how about Joe? How about you and George build a bamboo cage that I could sit in, and I'll sit in it, and let's make it 24 hours. So the whole town, no matter what their shift is, they'll see it. They'll see it. We started on Saturday morning at 7 o'clock, at opening ceremony, and Sunday morning at 7 o'clock we ended it. The first one, the temperature, we had nor'easter come in, and the temperature dropped 40 degrees in a very short period of time. And I was out there during the day, it was like 85. And I had on light slacks and a t-shirt with a POW-MIA thing. And all of a sudden I had my jacket on, and I put on another, I had to go to the head, and I stopped in there, I got a pair of long johns, I put them on, and I came out, and it was still very cold. And somebody brought this, I don't know if you remember, the police used to wear these big, heavy rubber raincoats.
Yes.
Somebody had one in the office for some reason. They brought that out and gave it to me, and I had it over my head, and I was like in a little ball, and I was freezing. And I'm looking out on Broad Avenue, and there's 3-foot geysers coming out of the manholes. And
But you kept to it.
That was the first.
Part of the, and
that was the first one.
everybody, I think, who was around during those years and saw this remembers it.
Yeah.
And at least partially understood what it was about, which was your objective, by doing something a little more dramatic, right?
Yeah.
Family got here in 1966. Your first visit to Leonia was in 68. You obviously liked what you saw because you and Charlene raised 2 sons here in Leonia. You live in Leonia today. You have been such an active member of our community with the Post and the Boy Scouts, etc. When you think about American Legion Post number 1 today, 2023, what do you see as the future of the Post? What can people do to help the Post?
I'm very concerned about the Post. There's a lack of, we can't get members. The younger members are dealing with families, jobs, etc. They're not really stepping up to join organizations. People could help. Veterans could help by joining, and the community could help by contributing to things. Shortly, you'll be getting a letter for the Memorial Day Parade, and shortly after that, there'll be a letter out for the poppies. If you can, contribute what you can to help. I'm concerned that we're not going to be here much longer, and that's very sad.
That would be a shame, because American Legion Post number 1 has been a pillar of our community for a long time. So we hope that we can transition from your leadership to next generations and still keep that
would be great.
Going. And Richie, on behalf of our community, thank you for your service. Thank you for your dedication and your commitment to community, which has been a defining characteristic of you for decades now. And we really do appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to ask one thing. If everybody would please pray for Dennis Castro and his unit. They just recently deployed, and they'll be on an extended deployment. And I ask them to pray to God to keep him safe and his unit.
And Dennis Castro is a Leon.
He's a member of the Post.
Thank you. On that note, thank you, Rich.
Thank you very much.